Well, I'm Swad Safe with SolarWinds, and I am here with Joel Delisi. He's our CTO, so he's the smart one of the two of us. Instead of walking you through a PowerPoint presentation today, we thought we'd have a conversation with everyone in the room and answer questions, tell you a little bit about ourselves, our products, our technologies, where we're headed, and then really make this a discussion, answer questions as we sort of roll along. In terms of SolarWinds, for those of you who are SolarWinds fans, I'm assuming all of you are, is that we're a software company that was really founded on the premise that technology needed to be built for the end users that actually face the problems every day inside of their work environments. These are the IT and now in the world of DevOps folks that were solving problems specifically. And if you recall, in terms of our background of a company, and I'll use Legos as my example, is that we have spent the last several years building a company that was focused on things like technology and products for network engineers to solve network problems, systems and applications problems, server application problems, and then of course virtualization management and monitoring problems for sysadmins and virtualization admins, and then storage in that context. We've also got a suite of products in the database performance monitoring, and then as well as security, plus a host of other products. What we realized as time has gone on and our end users of IT have started using our products is that though end users have singular problems around networking, systems, storage, virtualization, database, is that what really at the end of the day matters is how these problems interrelate to serve the needs of the end user, trying to solve the problems around application stacks. So yes, though these problems need to be solved in terms of performance monitoring and being able to resolve those issues quickly, that those problems by themselves don't make any sense unless you can really correlate them across the stack of applications, which is really the performance of an application. And in this day and age where all of us, and I had to give up my cell phone to come here into the room, but of us living our life off of applications, it matters in terms of the performance of how those application stacks are performing across those things, delivering response time to end users. So we as a company are spending our time, our product strategy, thinking about and solving those problems, not only independently, but also how they come together to solve the problems across the entire IT infrastructure. One of the things that you probably have not heard us talk about here at Tech Field Day is that we are not only talking about these problems as they exist in an on-premise IT world, but looking at the world from a broader perspective and really embracing that IT truly, or if you look at it as infrastructure of compute, storage, and networking, is available through a hybrid infrastructure. So some of it is on-premise, some of it is hosted, some of it is in the cloud, and a combination of all of that is working together matters, is that we are looking at solving those problems across all of those domains of IT, again in the context of still the end user of the IT specific area a problem they're trying to solve in the context of an application. So that's sort of the quick overview of the company. We've grown to add a number of products to the portfolio. Most recently last year, I guess since last Tech Field Day, have a database performance monitoring product that we added to the portfolio by way of acquisition of a company called Confio. And then most recently we entered the cloud era with a web performance monitoring product called Pingdom. Pingdom is a company that is actually based out of Sweden. They have over 500,000 users of their product to monitor websites and web applications. And that's probably a good example of us thinking of application performance, all the way from the outside in, from the web world, as well as from the bottom up from the infrastructure perspective. So that's kind of a quick overview of how we're thinking about the world, what products and technologies we're building. And with that, I'll hand it over to Joel to talk a little bit about how we're thinking about it from a technology perspective.
Cool. So the only comment I'll make about what Swat said is that yes, we are indeed looking at kind of getting all our products to work more integrated with each other, but we still also want to stay true to who we are, which is providing entry points that don't require you to buy a whole suite of products to actually get inside SolarWinds. Contrary to the move that you see VMware doing right now with their suite of everything, where they tend to kind of bunch up a bunch of tools in there. We know how the SMB and the commercial market are buying. We know how the end user want to buy, and they don't want super high price point. They don't want to end up with just a huge mishmash of stuff that they may use, they may not use, and that is at the end of the day kind of complicated to use anyway. So we want to stay true to that. And so I'm going to go from a kind of high-level technology perspective right now. What are we trying to do, and what have we been doing over the past kind of 6 months to a year since I think last time I talked, it was around this time, basically back in somewhere in Santa Clara. But basically, I also have the hat of CIO at SolarWinds. And so what happened is I look at, I own all the applications that are running internally, and I'm responsible for all the data flows of data between all the systems. So that gives me a lot of insight about how are our tools relevant into that type of stack. And basically, I use that knowledge with SWAT's team to make sure that we end up with the right set of requirements within our products. And so part of one, if I kind of look at one of our typical application right now, you've got our website, and we are all about leads, and those leads come up through reg forms. And so basically, if you look at the complexity of the application, what happened is in the end we want those reg forms to go to Marketo. But in the middle, we have a bunch of systems that are involved with this. We have what we call a service tier, which basically is an internal system that basically we use a kind of an enterprise service bus where we push data in and a bunch of consumers consume that data. So we basically push lead to that, and then we have some process that goes here and process that and sends that to Marketo. We also have a pretty big data analytics platform that we use internally that we have developed from scratch. And so we have another process basically that kind of process that and kind of goes this way. And if you look at that, I mean, it's relatively high level. And then we have another one that basically kind of push that to actually Salesforce. So basically, with just pushing one set of data, we end up actually getting data in a bunch of systems. The goal here was that all of those systems need to be loosely coupled so that we can add more, we can remove one. But if you look at the overall architecture, it's very simple at a high level. Now, if you look at the detail of that as kind of your all running systems and apps, you know that the detail is a little more complicated than that. Because every single one of those boxes has local queues so that we can ensure that data is being delivered even though a link may fail. But sometimes, those queues, they overflow. Or sometimes you have a bunch of error message on those queues and they go to a dead letter queue, and then somebody needs to look at that dead letter queue, otherwise it accumulates and then you end up with data that you lose. And so every single one of those links has a lot of single point of failure to some extent. And every time you try to resolve a single point of failure, you end up with another one. And so our goal right now is to make our app really kind of work to be able to solve, when you have applications that are dealing with this type of deployments. And this is not special to SolarWinds. If you talk to a lot of companies nowadays, it's a lot of the same stuff on the back end. We use a mix of hosted versus on-prem technology. Our service bus runs on Azure right now. People may actually use Apache. There's a bunch of technologies that you can use there to actually get things done. But the reality is that at every single one of those links and process, we want to be able to kind of look at and understand the performance aspect, the availability, and the faults of every single one of those links. And so if I take a step back and I look at all of our products, okay, we got from a networking perspective, we've got NPM. It's been the bread and butter of the company for a long time. It's a great software. And recently what we've done is we've added DPI technology within NPM. Why did we do that? Because NPM was actually doing really well. But the reality is there's a lot of those protocols nowadays where you need to be able to look on the wire to understand what's going on there. Because you don't have access, in overloaded HTTP traffic. I don't know what that HTTP traffic is actually conveying. Is it people going to Facebook? Is it people going to LinkedIn? Is it people actually going to other websites? I don't know. But if it's going to Marketo, I need to know that part of my traffic is actually going to Marketo. And by the way, you know, we've added this technology in NPM, and it comes for free. It's actually included inside the product with a certain number of probes, and basically you can kind of, you know, span a few switches basically, and then you can add more and buy additional ones, you know. But it comes out of the box with a certain number of built-in probes that actually are really cool to actually start getting the technology in place.
Well, let's talk about that in more detail, because SolarWinds has been for a long time a SNMP manager, collection of tools kind of put together, not always very well correlated, sometimes really well, all depending on what the piece was. So So drill into this, what you're talking about with the probes. This is new.
Yes. So basically those probes will allow us to basically kind of deploying those probes on various, servers or what do you call them? Virtual appliances, basically. And basically, they are just agents at the end of the day. From a software perspective, they have a really small footprint. And basically, with that, with each of those, you can, if you have, if you've got a, switch in, or whatever you basically have, one of those probes. You will basically kind of get span or mirror traffic from that switch, analyze it. And the use case that we decided to solve right now, again, going back to this application centricity, is application-aware NPM. We want to know what is the response time for all the applications that we can identify on the wire. What is the time, what is the availability of those services. But by us looking at the wire, we have visibility that we never had before. NetFlow is a great set of technology, but it's got its limitations. You have to use NBAR if you want to get there, and NBAR is kind of still linked to Cisco. It's not, it's not like you have a set of universal technology that you can use. The universal technology is DPI, and then having a good set of a library that can identify applications basically based on various signature. And so that's kind of the route that we decided to go with. Okay, and so the idea is with this gives us suddenly visibility at a layer where NPM didn't have any visibility before out of the box. And it's very complementary for us to the SNMP data that we get, because SNMP is still there. There's still a huge amount of collection of data that can happen to SNMP. And it's kind of honestly, it's the lingua franca of networking. As bad as that protocol is and as limited as it is, it seems it will never die. And so, we have to deal with it. And as much as I would like to actually be able to have more API-based data collection for networking, the reality is that we can't go away for it. I had a discussion yesterday with somebody from VMware about the fact that right now, if you want support for NSX out of the box for all the management tool, just expose your data as SNMP. Yes, it's great that you have an NSX API to get inside data from NSX being bubbled, but all those tools that you're talking about need to be changed and modified for us to actually kind of get visibility into that. And so we need to get to a point where there's at least a basic set of SNMP data that is basically being exposed by those vendors in order to get their system managed out of the box. And it kind of goes always the same way. If you look at Cisco when they introduced Nexus, what did they do? Oh, we've got a great web-based API. And guess what they had to do 3 years after? They had to beef up their SNMP support, because guess what? None of their Nexus stuff was actually being monitored properly by the existing platforms at the time. And I think it's a mistake that they do, because they always think, oh, people will just adopt our new APIs. But the fact is that I think it slows down their actually adoption of their software or hardware platform versus, kind of accelerating it from the get-go. But anyway, we're going on a tangent there. So basically, the DPI stuff and application-aware NPM gives us that visibility at the application level now. So that's on the networking side. With the DPA product that we acquired from Confio, basically that gives us visibility at what is happening between, on this link and at the database level here. And we do all this using an agentless technology right now. Kind of the thing that we are looking at is for some of the scenarios, we're going to have to go towards a model where we are able to drop an agent eventually closer to where the data is. And I think that's super important for us when you think about this hybrid IT environment, where you have part of your software that resides on-prem and part of it resides, in the cloud. You need to be able to have an agent that basically is there and is the broker of your communications back to the mothership, basically. And honestly, what we're targeting is really kind of deployment neutrality. I don't care if it needs, if you want to deploy within the confine of your on-prem environment, or if you want to deploy your management server in the cloud. It doesn't really matter for us. Eventually, we need to be able to support both of those scenarios. And that means that we need to have, data collectors in one area, and that need to be able to communicate back to the mothership that lives into another security zone, for instance. And so we're starting to get the building blocks of that. SAM is coming out, our server and application monitoring product actually has an agent that is coming up. The DPI, the probes that we have for NPM right now, for the DPI stuff, those are built on that agent infrastructure. So it's not just vaporware and things like that. And because at the end of the day, I'm still a big believer in remote agentless data collection. I think it's the best way to do it. But you know what? It's like everything. It covers 80%, and then there's that 20% of use cases that if you're doing just agentless data collection, you will not be able to kind of get it. And so I would rather get out of the religious argument whether you have agent or agentless and provide both type of data collection mechanism and allow our platform to basically kind of operate in all of those use cases.
That's also the thing is at the end of the day is that our customers and users of our product are actually deploying our technologies today in all of those scenarios. Whether they're doing it, we have customers that are using our products, actually monitoring server performance in the cloud as well as doing it on premise. What we're trying to really do is provide the fullest set of products that they need, that they can start with solving a specific problem that they have today and then build over time. But at the end of the day, if you look at what Joel is talking about, is that there's two big things going on. One is if you look at the world of our company, we run our business off of a variety of software as a service applications as well as on-premise applications. And some of those SaaS applications are running in the cloud, some are hosted, some of our applications are running on-premise. All of those have to interoperate. And so what the problems that Joel's team, from his CIO part of Joel's team is solving every day is the delivery of those applications from a performance perspective for us internally, which is not very different than all of our customers and how they are consuming that information. And so what we're really at the end of the day providing is the ability to identify when the problem happens, or proactively identifying problems that are about to happen, whether they're in the network, in the server, in the application, the virtualization tier, is it in the database, and being able to resolve those problems as quickly as possible. And so if you look at the topography of an application today, it's deployed in lots of disparate ways. The problems are the same, which is, at the end of the day, the performance of each of those components, as well as all of it working together, matters. And that's really what we're triangulating towards every single day in terms of the technologies that we bring to the market.
Yep.
So I've been using SolarWinds off and on for many years.
Sure.
And as you guys have assembled the different pieces that are monitoring all the different parts of this infrastructure you're describing, really what the interface is it's a different way to drill into different chunks. If you know what you're looking for, you can find it. There's a lot of conveniences in the interface to drill into different things, but there's not really data correlation where you can follow a transaction through at all its different levels, because you described a stack.
Yes.
Well, you're still looking at each stack as a slice, not the stack as a whole, in my recent experience with it. So
I think it's a totally fair comment, and I think that what I'm frustrated by it also, and so we are moving towards solving that. So we are working on technology called AppStack, which basically goes back to this, the presence of the Legos here.
Yeah, so the two parts to this. One is that the point that you made earlier, which is that we built our technology through acquisition. So the first part was to take our platform and put the acquisition pieces on top of it, which is what we've been doing over the last couple of years. So as you've noticed probably, if you use the Orion platform, that you will see us delivering technology as they come together. So what we're working on is a technology that we've talked about publicly called AppStack, which will enable you to correlate that information that you have now. We couldn't get there unless we actually had the pieces all integrated after we brought them to market. The thing is that each of those products that we've acquired or brought into the family had huge fans that we had to make sure we served those user bases while integrating in the platform. So the journey to integration has been a little bit longer than we probably would have liked, most definitely longer than Joel would have liked. Yep. And as that technology is coming together, we are in the process of, sometime right after the new year, bringing out to market the correlation capabilities that you're talking about, in which we will bring for you, if you're the user of technologies across our network, systems, storage, virtualization, is to be able to take a AppStack view of it and then drill into where the problem is, as opposed to, like you said, is that if I know what I'm looking for, then I can go seek it. Yeah. Whereas if you don't know across those dimensions, we absolutely hear you, and that is exactly the use case we're working on solving. And this is, basically, we're planning to bring it to market in the early part of next year.
Right. Yeah. The other part is we really we want to bring data. Actually, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Whether it comes from our pillars. Like if I go back to kind of the Lego. The Lego approach, where we have, you've got all the silos, like, you've got network, you've got system, you've got, apps, you've got, Vert in there. You've got, on top of it is actually, storage. That's what I needed here. And then you've got the app really on top of it. Kind of what we are shifting really right now is a lot of the problems that people care about are about the app. It's my app is slow. It's not even my app doesn't work. It's actually people start screaming when the app is slow. So basically what we are looking at is really the primary actor needs to be the app. All the other ones need to be just supporting actors. They are super important, don't get me wrong. And I think we need deep visibility, and with the approach that we have and the history we have there, I think we have a great position there to actually still provide a lot of that details. But to your point, all of that needs to be put under the umbrella of the app, and not only kind of allowing you to do a manual correlation of the data, but the tool needs to help you troubleshoot the data. We need to be able to, when you have an alert, for instance, we need to be able to bring the right metrics, or at least tell you we believe that those metrics are relevant to the problem that you have. And we actually have that information inside, our correlation engine, I would say. 4 years ago, I made the presentation, I think, to another group here about SAM at the time. And I went through how we were actually correlating the data and how we were linking the data from our different projects. And basically, what we are doing right now and what AppStack is doing right now is exploiting that data. So it only took us 4 years. So there's hope that we'll get there, in the next 6 to 9 months, we'll get there and really kind of provide this information a lot better. But basically, what we expose this to is we have, an information service, basically, and it's actually called Swiss for us, which is a SolarWinds information service. And basically, it started as a SOAP-based API. So it's the API that our website and a lot of partners are actually using and customers are using to automate the Orion platform, which basically is the underpinning of most of our products. And so we are basically providing SOAP bindings, and we also provide, we added REST JSON bindings about a year and a half, 2 years ago, because it was just an easier model to actually kind of consume data. And also we ported this originally from a .NET platform to Java also, and it was difficult to actually get the SOAP stuff to work properly on Java. It was just a lot easier to actually get stuff working with REST and JSON there. So with Swiss, basically what is Swiss? Well, Swiss is our API. So, maybe you don't know that there's an API, but there's actually an API. And kind of, even though we are not hosted and we don't talk about our API, very publicly, we have an API on top of our platform. It'd be silly to develop an API, a platform without a set of APIs that people actually can use. And what Swiss does, it basically exposes a conceptual model of, the data that we collect. So it provides an ideal view of all the data that we collect, both configuration data and performance data. And so basically in there, we have entities that represents, at the base one, we have a node. And a node represents an endpoint on the network. And then we have a VM. We have entities for hypervisor. We have entities for database. And what we do is we link all of those entities together so that at least we have knowledge about what are the relationships between those. And it's those relationships that we can exploit in AppStack to know that, this app is relying and is running on this machine. We know that because we discovered those bits on that machine. Well, we know that machine is actually, it's a node, but we also know that that's a VM. Oh, wait, that VM actually runs onto a hypervisor that we are monitoring also. So we have an entity for that hypervisor. And all of those are linked. So we know that multiple VMs are running onto a host. And so if you end up with multiple VMs running on that host and that host goes down, we know that other VMs will actually be impacted by that. And so, that VM may host multiple applications, or one of those applications can actually be a database. And so in the end, we have this kind of very rich data model, conceptual model, which is nothing new actually. It's the DMTF came out with something called the SIM, which is the Common Information Model back in 2000. Which is what WMI, the Windows Management Instrumentation Framework from Microsoft, was actually an implementation of. What we have is we have our own take on that. And we took a lot of what SIM was doing, and we added things that I believed at the time that SIM was not addressing. Like SIM didn't do anything really well for inheritance. So if I've got a node and I want to say, this node actually is a computer, and the computer derives or inherits all its attributes from a node. It was handled by SIEM in a manner that is not working. So basically, the summary of this is we have a very rich set of information. Every product that we build on top of Orion ships with its own information model. The first thing that happens when you install that set of bits on top of Orion, that gets integrated into our information service, and basically you can start querying data against the information service for those new entities. And basically what we have is we have a query language called SWCL for SolarWinds query language, which is heavily influenced by SQL. With some object-oriented, aspect to it. And basically with this, you can just type, select, nodes.name from nodes, and basically that's only the thing that you need to know. And with that, you're going to retrieve a list of all the nodes that Orion knows about through discovery. If you want to make change, we have verbs and operations that you can invoke using REST or using some SOAP capabilities on Swiss. So basically, if you want to add a node programmatically, you can call basically the add node method onto the node entity, and basically you will get basically a new node created without you having to interact with the UI at all. So it's fully functional. We've been developing that over the past 5 to 6 years now. The first version came out, I think, in 2008. And we've been adding more and more support for the entities into that, and that's what is allowing us right now to be able to do that correlation between products in a much deeper manner than a lot of people can do just at the UI level. But it just took us some time to actually get to that point, and I'm actually quite happy that we're going to get there in the first part of 2015, where we actually really are going to have this app stack visualization of what I really envisioned, a few years ago, which is this end-to-end mapping of applications, and not just having to go through, drill down the individual views yourself in Orion. So that's kind of a short parenthesis over how we get the data. But just FYI, that stuff is already in the product. So if you have Orion deployed right now, there's actually a forum on Thwack where you can actually get documentation for the API. And we have bindings, PowerShell scripts. We have, I think, Ruby, Java, all those things we have examples for every single one of those technologies on how to interact with our API.
When you get to the point of having that app stack view that you're talking about, that visualization released, you're talking early 2015, how is that going to be productized? Is that part of NPM? Is that a different thing someone's going to have to buy? How's that going to work?
So the way we're thinking about it is that we're going to give you the visualization capability, but really our go-to-market motion is not going to change, which is to enable the users of our products to solve those individual pieces. And so as you add the pieces of the Lego blocks, that's why I keep using Legos as example, you'll get more and more capability through that app stack view. So yes, you would have to buy the specific product. So example.
But app stack's going to be part of the core functionality, it sounds like. Just how rich it is going to depend on what pieces
what pieces of the Legos you have, exactly right. Yeah. So if you have our server, the SAM product is a core, key part of it. And if you have virtualization manager, storage manager, etc., you will fill the Legos out, so you'll get a richer view of what the stack looks like based on what the components are that you own.
It's almost like a progressive view, basically. The more of the products you have, the clearer the picture you have about your app stack gets.
Yeah.
If you have only one product, it's going to be pretty blurry because one of those things is failing, but I don't know which one.
It goes right along with the business model you've had. This is not new, yeah.
Correct, yeah. Because otherwise it would be easy for us to actually go and say, we're going to create a bundle with everything, and then you're going to have the perfect picture, but it kind of dilutes who we are. And I don't believe that's how end users and our target audience actually buy products.
And if you think about Joel's vision around our platform strategy is that, there's companies out there in the software world that talk about platform, but their assumption is that the customer is going to consume the entire platform and the entire suite altogether. Well, our approach to the platform is that we built that underlying scaffolding, if you may, of the platform, even in the model of you consuming one product at a time, such that you get the benefit of the entire platform based on how filled out it is, versus the reverse process, which is really, we always like to be the rebels. We were walking over here and we saw the Payless shoes store right next door. And so I made a joke to one of my teammates, and I said, "Oh, looks like that's a co-branded property of SolarWinds," because our approach is really to be fast, easy, affordable from a product perspective. So we couldn't be the same old platform company like all the other software companies out there. What we want to do is build a platform, though, because we know that there's a benefit of the platform, which is to be able to have a data model that can actually give you a broader, deeper view of your problems in your IT environment. But we didn't want you to have to consume it the way we were going to cram it down your throat. We want our users to decide how they want to consume it and then build out their infrastructure and then get the benefit of it over time. And so we're going to stay true to that same knitting as we build an app stack capability and bring it to market next year.
Do we understand right that you're going to have both the components apart and the stack model where you can put the components in? You'll still have the components apart to use as well? Or not?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. The point is that our go-to-market model will not change in terms of you consuming products that solve specific problems for you. So if you need a virtualization manager to manage your virtual machines with our SAM product, you can consume that, but and then let's assume you don't have storage manager with that. Well, you can add storage manager later. You can add those SKUs as you go on, and you'll get a broader view. Now, we'll have suggested implementation of a full app stack view if you're trying to solve the entire application view of the whole thing from the get-go. But we're not going to try and productize the whole thing and get people to consume the whole thing.
I just don't think I agree. You know the products better than I do. That you should still have the products apart as models.
It goes against their business model.
If I go to the
and I see where you're going.
If I go as someone that does not know SolarWinds and I go to your website, I see 20 products doing the same thing for specific stuff.
Isn't that the same as VCops and Navigator, the whole complete package, and they're separating it up into pieces and parts?
But I like the idea of the stack and the components, bringing it into one product. How much you need it. I just don't think, for me, I still need those 20 different products.
For your use case, you may be absolutely right, and so you will find in terms of when we come to market, we will show you examples of how you can consume the app stack beyond just a single unit, one unit at a time. So let me give you an example. So if you look at our network performance monitor product, we just added the application aware capability, as Joel talked about, in which we have deep packet inspection capability. But a lot of the people who consume network performance monitor from us are worried about bandwidth issues on their networks, maybe not the application aware part of it. You can buy the product to do either of those things. If you care about the application aware feature capability, there's web pages on our website that talk to you about the application aware deep packet inspection capability. So for people who want to consume more than one piece of the Lego block, you can do it. But for someone who is just trying to look at a server or an application and monitor that, we don't want them to consume the entire stack to get that job done. That is actually against our model.
I get that part, but you still have 20 products doing the same for a specific part of the infrastructure.
Sure.
But it's 20 kind of exact products. Do you get where I'm going here or not?
Well, they're not the exact product.
It's all monitoring and reporting.
But there's a tiering structure here where you can spend a little bit of money to do something specific, and then you can spend more money, if you want to. So it's really aimed at someone who's on a budget here.
Have you guys thought about allowing the customer to just have a single download that has all the products, license what they pay for, either per year, per VM per year, per VM per month? Because let's say you have an Exchange server that all of a sudden is smoking. Maybe you're fine with paying for all the tools for that Exchange server for a month because you need to troubleshoot it.
Sure.
But you can't get a budget to buy every tool at once. It's just...
That's an interesting thought. That's the power and the challenge of having Lego blocks as our product, so you can put them together yourself. Is that there will be not one single configuration, that one size will not fit all, and we'll be spending our time, and you will be spending your time trying to configure the right pieces of the puzzle. We'd rather you come to us with the problem you're trying to solve. So if you have an Exchange issue, that you take our server and application monitor product with our App Insight for Exchange and go solve that problem. specifically at that point in time, without having to worry about any of the other pieces of the puzzle that may not be relevant. Like, do you really care about storage that day? No, you don't care about whether your storage up or not, unless it's part of your Exchange architecture where you're using the storage devices. And so, it's a really good point. I mean, we should think about it, but we've gone around trying to make the Lego blocks come together, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden we have an economic order quantity of 1, and then it gets into a pricing challenge. At the end of the day, our approach is to make it really, really simple for you.
Yeah, pricing has nothing to do with product development, right? It's just how you deliver it to the customer. I mean, it should.
I wouldn't go that far.
I was going to let him finish his thoughts.
If it is, I'd rather see it as plugins in one product that you buy as what you need, as in all different products.
But that's what they are.
That's what it is.
So
it actually is.
That is exactly what they are. So if you look at, or let's get rid of
Maybe that
Swiss.
would be a better way of presenting it.
Yeah. So.
Have the overall package, and you're buying the plugins to expose availability.
I think one of the things that we've done, honestly, is really going away from the get-go. And by design, we never talked about the fact that every single one of those products, took 20 out of the 29 that we have, they are really plugins on top of an existing infrastructure, or on top of an existing platform. We have never talked about the fact that we have a platform by design, because we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the HP Open Views and so on that always talk about install the platform
But
first.
Ethan and I made hundreds of thousands of dollars installing that crap.
Because the thing is that the word platform has a connotation in the marketplace that we did not want to fall into the same trap, because as soon as someone said, the word platform, all of a sudden you heard giant truck, download big, giant truck of software in order to consume it, whereas what you really wanted to solve is a very specific set
You
of
forgot the
problems.
busload of consultants.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right. And the busload of consultants. And
The training for the staff. And,
But from an architecture perspective, as you can imagine, from a data model perspective, it doesn't make sense to have separated blocks that don't talk to each other. They're actually all on the Orion platform. That's the one that we don't.
So this takes care of authentic.
Now it makes sense to me. I mean,
Okay.
this is what I was
Glad we-
missing. I was listening to 20 different products, which it's not.
No, that would be nuts. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally, yes. No.
These are the gray is the Orion platform, and you can snap in and out what you need for your use case. It's just that when you buy it like this, we don't want you to worry about the fact that it's sitting on a platform and get yourself all confused and concerned. But when you do consume the next technology piece that helps you solve the virtualization issues or storage manager issues, your picture comes together, but it's bolted onto the same technology core principle. And over time, we brought the colored Legos on top of the gray are part of some of the acquired products that we've brought into the family that are getting integrated into the Orion platform.
The reason I brought up the per VM conversation is because, I see more things in the market around vApps. They might want to monitor a vApp. But I don't want to monitor the other 5,000 devices. But this vApp is important, And so how do you guys, especially if you're talking about cloud, what's your thought process around that,
Still got the application dependency and mapping out where it goes.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
smaller
so-
scale of what they're presenting as a whole.
So we are actually, talking right now, but it is still very early in terms of really kind of having a different application-centric, work, which basically would actually be more SaaS and actually delivered in probably a subscription model, other than the on-prem stuff that we have right now. And it's not a mutually exclusive stuff. We actually want those things to be able to integrate at one point. But we realize that, and I realize, I don't care, honestly, as a CIO, whether my IT team and my BizApps team are actually, consuming something that is on-prem or a SaaS application. I want the problem solved. I don't really care. As long as we can interpolate the data and integrate them within our workflow, it doesn't matter to me. And there's a lot, I think that's the thought process that a lot of IT shops are going through, that it doesn't really matter. Solve my problem, and then as long as it's not an esoteric kind of type of solution, we'll deal with it. And so we are talking about kind of that right now, but it's still too early right now to talk about really kind of concrete elements of that. But one of the things that we realize is, going back, on top of the app, you've got different dimension and perspective around an app. And again, it's a little bit like the religious, debate about, you've got the log guys that say, oh, you don't need RAM data. You have everything into the logs. Don't buy, don't add an agent that basically will do bytecode instrumentation. You don't need that. But at the end of the day, you know what? There's data that is relevant from a bytecode instrumentation data streams, and then the data about your app that will never get into a bytecode instrumentation stream. It's going to be in a log file because the developer, for once, actually logged a message that said an error is happening. And at the end of the day, the true, really the eye of the beholder is you need to have all of those perspectives covered by your application-centric view. You need to have RAM data if it's a web app. You need to have WPM data if it's a web app, because the RAM data tells me what are my customers right now experiencing accessing my website. But WPM gives me a baseline about what should I expect from all those geos for a synthetic user. And then I can start correlating RAM data and WPM data to see how am I doing. The other part is you need log data. There's a tremendous amount of data and information in logs. And yes, it's a mountain of data, but there's data that is only in the log files. It's never anywhere else. You need to be able to have bytecode instrumentation. BCI, which is basically, let me take a deep look at the code that is running. There are things that I will never discover outside of bytecode instrumentation. And then the other one is just basic application resource management. What is the basic CPU, memory, private bytes, all of those things that Windows and Java reports about your app? There's a tremendous amount of value of that. But really what you need to have all of that stuff correlated and basically provided in an easy way, easy to digest way of doing things. And that's what we are working on, really, is to try to get that delivered. Because at the end of the day, we have a lot of the pillars that can bring us data and visibility about the different parts, the stack of the application. But what we still need to do is bring all of those application-centric data points together and get them in an easily digestible manner so that you don't have to do the manual correlation. Going back to the manual correlation aspect, which, if you have all of those data streams just for an app, there's no way you will spend time to actually try to correlate that manually. You'll get, just looking at log data will make you crazy. So we are working on that because we believe, and I believe as me dealing with the ups and downs of our websites and our internal infrastructure, that is what I need in order for us to be successful internally. I need a tool that gets us there. And honestly, right now, we use other competitors' tool internally. We use New Relic, for instance, for doing bytecode instrumentation and RAM data. But, New Relic is nice, but it's only two perspectives on the app. I still need to go into my IIS logs and log4net log or log4j log to actually find out some of the problems. I still have to go and figure out from SAM what was the CPU utilization, what are the private bytes, do I have a memory leak into this thing or not? I have to do that. And then, the WPM data, I still need to be able to look at that as a baseline. So overall, that's kind of where we are heading. It's really kind of taking, on top of those pillars here is the app and looking all those perspectives, on top of that.
And I was talking to some of the users of our products the other day, and as we talked about what their needs are and what kinds of problems they're solving every day, and they said, there's a new four-letter word in the IT world, and it is slow. And they get so many requests as IT departments on why is this slow, why is that slow, and
That's new?
and the thing is that they get calls on things that they may or may not have their purview or view into, but they need to figure out where is the actual problem and be able to understand whether it is things that are outside of their purview, is it inside of their infrastructure, and be able to quickly find and identify the issues and so solve that problem.
So you had mentioned
it on the storage guy doesn't work anymore?
You had mentioned early on some of the applications being outsourced to the cloud, like Salesforce.com, and that you can play in that space now and do some monitoring there. Did I understand that right?
Well, obviously, you're limited by what visibility you have in the hosting provider itself. If Salesforce is not giving you access to any of the things that are behind it, that's going to be a problem. But you've got technologies like, AppNeta or Thousand Eyes, for instance, that are providing you metrics for the path going to those cloud providers. And I think that is valuable data. Because at the end of the day, if I'm responsible for IT, I want to know, am I responsible for this slowness, Or is it NetSuite or Salesforce that basically is, the problem for it?
So the story here is you're buying Thousand Eyes. Is that what I just heard?
No, I'm not saying. That's why I mentioned more than one to make sure that no, but
that's the thing. And the important thing is in that context. That's our view as an end user or customer of Salesforce.com or NetSuite. If you go one step down into NetSuite and Salesforce.com's view of the world, is that they have the same exact problem inside of their infrastructure, where they have customers that they have thousands of customers running out of this infrastructure. They need technology in our products, and a lot of those companies use our products to solve problems inside of their view of where they are having performance problems inside of the IT environment.
So if my Salesforce.com user that's sitting inside my network, complains about poor performance, can SolarWinds, as it stands today, tell me I'm good until the edge, and then from there, my transaction times reaching out to Salesforce.com
actually
are pretty
with
slow.
DPI, no. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, because we have visibility. We know exactly which website is basically, which HTTP traffic is actually slow, and so we can actually tell you at that level, what is the response time until we hit the website.
As opposed to say a DNS query being slow.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. So that's kind of, overall what we're trying to do there is really provide that additional value, kind of visibility up to where we have visibility. But physics is physics, or deployments, and I wish we could actually get stuff, on some of those host provider, agents and whatnot, and some of them will probably be compatible with that, and some of them will never. But we'll always try to push, the envelope further and further. Just a quick note about Orion, as we talked about the platform. A few years ago, actually, when I talked about, and 4 years ago, we talked about a model when we were acquiring a bunch of companies, like we acquired Hyper9 for our virtualization manager product and so on, in an integration model that was really federated. And the idea at the time was to actually get them to run as separate entities, but still integrate with Orion in some manner, using a common data bus between them. What we've evolved over the years is to really kind of go and really kind of, those monitoring products, they need to run on top of Orion. They need to be first-class citizen there, because people want the single pane of glass. They don't want to end up having to replicate alerts. They don't want to have to replicate, reports across different management platforms. And so what we are doing right now is migrating, and basically a lot of those products like virtualization manager and STM or storage product on top of Orion. And they're becoming fully fledged module over that, which basically will provide us, a lot more flexibility in terms of adding support for new devices or new hypervisors and things like that in the future, compared to having to maintain yet another platform just for those products as they are running right now. And the investment there, you still have to do security reports, alerts, all of that needs to be improved. And the more products you have, the less economical sense it makes, because you have to kind of make the same investment in multiple platforms. So we are kind of doing that, and that's why I put vMan and SRM on top of Orion, because they need to basically kind of, they are getting there, relatively soon, and we'll basically kind of have me be in a much better position at that point, because they will integrate directly with our information service, having those elements, which is critical for us to have the app stack visibility. They all need to play into that world. The Confio product that is running currently, as a separate product, we have, a migration path also, where basically it's going to run, also on top of the Orion product eventually. And I hope that I'm making everything to try not to have to wait 4 years for that to happen. So, but I think we learned our lesson, and we know that that's how consumers and our users want to actually see the data. And we know that we don't want to do the same, I would say, mistakes, but kind of slow roll or slow integration that we've done in the past. So we've learned a lot. We've done a lot of acquisitions over my lifetime at SolarWinds, and with every single one of them, we've learned something different. And I think overall, the resounding team for all the monitoring products that we've acquired, that they need to run on top of Orion as a native product, and be part of the data collection and all that, and the policies that we run there, in order to actually be really successful.
Yeah, and the thing is that these are all checkboxes that exist in our portfolio today. So it's a matter of them integrating with the platform. So today, if you have a database performance problem, you can actually go take DPA to do it. It's just that it's not integrated into the platform, so you cannot correlate it with other parts of your infrastructure that may be running on current SolarWinds products as well. And that's the part that we plan to close the gap on.
Can you perform actions based off of correlation? For instance, if you find out you've got a database problem and you've correlated that with an actual storage problem, can you actually run an action that can talk to the vSphere API to storage vMotion something at a later date?
So we have some level of action in SAM right now, but it's still a per product type of thing. Like SAM will allow you to restart a service, for instance, if you have things. And we've talked about beefing that up. Now, we have a great source of scripts already because, I think last year we acquired Enable, and they have a portfolio of scripts that their platform is using, which is a bunch of PowerShell scripts. So things that we've talked about is, could we actually reuse that library of scripts and integrate that with Orion? Because then we have, out of the gate, we have a bunch of scripts that can be used to actually manage and to take action on a lot of different things. Now, the automatic, taking action automatically it is something that I feel, kind of not really too warm with, because I think that, a lot of people have been burned by automatic, kind of taking action. I think that I'm always for a model where we tell you what you should do, but still somebody needs to push the button to actually do it,
Yeah, so maybe you can see the correlation and go, I think this is the problem, here's how you fix it, click this button.
Yeah. And I think, overall, on Suat's team, they are really focusing on the troubleshooting aspect, which I think goes hand in hand with the remediation. Because I think we have a lot of data in Orion, from all the products. What the step that we need to do is, okay, how can we make it easier to actually solve the problems that people are experiencing? And that goes with providing, hints about what the remediation can be, but also helping you doing that correlation with AppStack. And also if AppStack is not relevant in the type of, when you're investigating an incident, for instance, so where it's at, it's at the virtualization layer. Well, the tool will provide you a list of the interesting metrics that are related to the type, most likely to the type of problem that you actually are encountering. So it's not correlation just with predictive analysis and all that, because I think that there's a lot of false positive in that, and it doesn't. I don't think it works really, in all the situation. But it's something that is very compatible, where people feel comfortable that at least we are providing them, at least a path on the solution. We're not trying to find a solution directly for them, because that's extremely difficult, and to do it accurately. But what we can do is mark the path on where the solution is by providing a lot more input points, and basically, based on the data that we've collected.
Once you've marked the path, if you've had the same issue reply multiple times, you could leave the choice of, do you want me to handle this automatically?
Yes, it is. And I think one of the things that we are thinking about is, how does the community also play into that? We have Twak, for instance, where the Twak is really deeply integrated with our products, and on the SAM side, you can export templates. One of the things that we should be able to do there is, for common solution to those, problems, well, how can you share that with Twak and basically allow the community to actually kind of then, reuse that knowledge and then, bring that back into, somebody else's, Orion instance, and help them, show them how others have solved that similar problem.
Because we don't see all the problems, but the community as a whole, from a crowdsourcing perspective, has a view of the world. In fact, today we learn a lot from our Slack community in terms of how they are using our products to troubleshoot, and so we want to make that more central as part of our product view, so that enables other users of our product to share in that information and leverage that right into the product.
And I think one of the things that might be interesting would be, let's say you're looking at the database product and it's showing a metric that is outside of normal. Well, if I'm the storage administrator, but I'm in charge of monitoring this tool also, I might not know anything about database metrics. Sure. So it would be interesting to be able to click on those metrics and go right to the fact site to be able to find some information that's been posted, and then B, do a submittal where it would take the metric itself, and then you could go to the right form and you could just submit your question based on the metric, and the people could help you.
Yeah, and I think that goes right in that kind of crowdsourcing, getting Twak really not just as a way to exchange templates, but really kind of get them involved in the resolution of, how do you solve the problems that are related to that.
But it sounds like it's AppStack, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like that's not necessarily geared towards a engineer for a particular single resource pool within your environment, right? So you're not necessarily looking for a storage engineer or a virtualization engineer. You're looking at more of an application level, almost like a developer person at that point, right? Because the other level engineers are going to look at the tailored products within the Orion suite that would be more appropriate for the resources that they're responsible for.
Yeah, it's actually both, in the sense that we are tailoring these products for each of those specific personas or users, if you may. And the question that we get asked all the time is, but there's a problem that's happening at the higher level, at the application view. What is the application view of that? Which may send someone down to go talk to the network engineer because of a network problem that they're dealing with. So in the prior example we used, the network was not the issue. What if the network is the issue, being able to identify that, or it was a specific system-related or virtualization-related issue that you can identify that. So it's our approach is going to be to give you the capability at the individual level if you have an organization that is that way. But if you have someone who's responsible for this application and its performance, then you have that view as well. So it's both.
Isn't it always the network until they prove it different?
well, that was part of our, it's kind of funny you say that, because that was part of our thesis point when we went out last year to gather information on what the next move for our network product was, is that when we interviewed and talked to a lot of network engineers, they were like, well, we are to blame whether it's an application problem or a network problem. And so, here we have application-aware networking. So at least at the first cut, you can figure out whether it's an application or network problem, so you can send it down the right path to go to be resolved. But at the end of the day, yes, we always blame the network, even we do
We do, always.
And I guess I'm just trying to understand how AppStack is really differentiated from SAM. Because for years I've heard SAM as being positioned and marketed as something that will help you correlate events between multiple platforms to identify the root cause of a problem that's hitting one of your services. And so what's really the key difference between those two?
I think AppStack for me is a layer above SAM. SAM feeds a lot of data within AppStack from what it sees and the correlation that it can do already right now. But at the end of the day, if I want to consume and figure out, let's say that I have a red icon right now in SAM that says, my exchange is not behaving properly. I just have a red icon there. I have to do a lot of navigation around to figure out at what level in the stack could actually the problem be located. What AppStack is supposed to solve is to give you a high-level picture of your stack supporting Exchange directly with the different data feeds from the different products that you own that are relevant for that particular instance of Exchange.
So it's going to be able to pull data from Storage Manager and vMan and whatever else, you've licensed, right? So whatever you have is going to make the AppStack more valuable.
That's exactly.
You have one tool that is going to be.
That's why I talk about more of this progressive picture that, the more of the products you have that are involved in your problem, the clearer the picture you're going to have about where the problem is located.
Right, because you got more data points to support what's going on.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
But one of the things that we're going to try to do is to provide you hints that we have other products that can help you if your picture is incomplete, which right now, the feedback that we have a lot of users is that they don't even know that we have a lot of other products that can solve and provide answers to that.
Sure.
It's amazing how many NPM customers, for instance, don't know that we have SAM. And we believe it's kind of assumed for us that that's the case, that they would all know that we have those two products. But we need to do a better job in the UI, not in a heavy-handed marketing way, but really kind of in the sense of we really have products here with data that could really help you solve this particular issue.